and it's good that I am Superman of Doom Chapter 65. Many news messages and cyber intelligence, accompanied by live pictures and videos. White Illusion saw a glimmer in Yiming's eyes. He recognized at a glance that these villains who suddenly appeared in New York City were not Dr. Octopus, Electric Lightman, Green Goblin, and Lizardman. But the problem is that these supervillains should all come from the movie world of other Spider-Man series. Villains from other cosmic worlds, multiverse. Meng quickly thought of something. Although I haven't seen other follow-up films in the post-Avengers era. But he still understood in his previous life that after the sacrifice of Iron Man, the Marvel Universe will enter the realm of the multiverse. Now, the chaos happening in this world is not the trend at the beginning of the Marvel multiverse. Supervillains from other universes have arrived. This beginning, how is it a bit like my real world? Quote. Yiming's thoughts flowed, and if he thought like this, then the real world entered the multidimensional field 200 years ago. Moreover, it is a more complex, terrifying, and vast multiverse than the Marvel multiverse. Call him a supervillain, don't mess with me. Emin's electronic eyes flashed red, and a large, brightly lit modern city appeared at the end of the field of vision. New York, it's almost there. At this time, New York. Queens. A modern residential tower with 30 floors. Ding dong. The elevator opens. Peter Parker, who was still wearing a nanometal version of the spider suit, walked out first. His somewhat immature and green face looked a little haggard. Turned back to the elevator behind him and said, "Come out, it's almost here." Quote. With his words, the four people walked out of it. It was a white man wearing an ordinary t-shirt and jeans with a grim face, a man in a trench coat with sunglasses wrapped around four mechanical octopus tentacles. A black man with a charging groove on his chest and flashing electric light in his eyes, and a strong man with skin like sand. Peter, what's the use of you bringing us to the apartment? We are dangerous, the white man at the head said weakly with a concerned and worried expression. It's okay, you're just sick and flawed, there's a machine here that can heal you. Trust me, Spider-Man Peter Parker said with a smile and continued to walk towards the portal of the modern apartment where Aunt May and Harpy began living together. Behind him, four people from other universes looked at each other, each pregnant with a ghost. Led by Spider-Man Peter Parker, the four followed to the door of the apartment on the 16th floor. Aunt May. Spider-Man knocks on the door and calls. After a while, there was a sound of steps in the house, and the door opened. Peter, you're back. You can't guess who came to our house as a guest. Quote. May, who was dressed at home, said happily while opening the door, and when she saw four men standing behind Peter, she couldn't help but be stunned. It turns out that you also brought someone to the door as a guest. Quote. Aunt May, I'm sorry. The situation is somewhat complicated and they need help. Quote. Spider-Man Peter Parker was suddenly a little annoyed. He didn't have time to understand the situation at home, but there was no way to get into a hurry. In order to help heal these otherworldly visitors, he just fell out with Doctor Strange and locked Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. May, is it convenient to let them in? They really need help, otherwise they will surely die when they return to their own world. Peter Parker lowered his voice, stood in the doorway, and said sincerely to Aunt May. Aunt May wanted to agree, but she had certain concerns, and glanced back at the inside of the apartment. But, Peter, there is a special little guest in the house. Little guest? Spider-Man Peter Parker was surprised when he saw a small figure walking out of a room. It was a 6-year-old blonde loli, wearing white brand-name children's clothes, with a small face like a doll, and looked petite and cute like an angel. 0074 out of control, he's back. I thought it was Harpy coming back, it turned out to be Mr. Parker, good evening. Little loli herself with a noble temperament of family heritage, walked out of the living room, very politely greeted Spider-Man at the door. And then looked curiously at the four mysterious people with different shapes outside the door. Morgan. Spider-Man Peter Parker was stunned, and couldn't help but ask May, why is she here? Harpy brought her over to play, and she also used the maker machine to create a toy. May smiled and lowered her voice, don't look at people who are only 6 years old. And now they have entered MIT. If you also go in, then she is your senior sister. Quote. What about Harpy? Spider-Man's green face suddenly became serious. May saw something abnormal, and couldn't help but reply, go buy Morgan the cake she likes to eat, I should be back soon. Quote. Spider-Man Peter Parker looked at Morgan, his heart suddenly stopped. No matter how mentally retarded, he knew the importance of the other party. It is absolutely impossible to put her in any danger. Otherwise, he has the face to face the portrait of Mr. Stark. Although the situation is still under his control, there is still a strong sense of unease when he sees Morgan. Aunt May, please take Morgan out of here now and go somewhere else. Peter Parker immediately decided to let May leave with Morgan and take care of the rest herself. Okay. May glanced at the four people who had been standing outside the door, guessed something, turned around and quickly said softly to the little loli, Morgan, I'll take you to New York Park to play. And then let Uncle Harpy send you home. Quote. No problem. Little Loli bowed her head obediently, looking like a little adult, and then trotted into the room. I'll go get my toys. May also began to change into her own outdoor shoes. Peter Parker secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, but heard a faint voice behind him. Peter, I look at you. I value that girl very much. Peter Parker's heart tightened, and he remained calm. She is the child of a relative of mine. Quote. Oh yes, outside the door, Norman, the Green Goblin with a weak and pale face, thought thoughtfully. My daughter, she used to be quite like her. The Sandman rarely showed a smile. I seem to have seen her somewhere. The Electric Light Man's brows were slightly wrinkled, and blue electric light flowed in his eyes. Dr. Octopus was silent. Half a minute later, Morgan walked out again, only to be followed by a white, fat humanoid doll walking on his own, up to 2 meters tall. Outside, everyone on the field was stunned. Morgan, this is the toy you made? Even Aunt May was shocked, never expected that Morgan would design and manufacture such a big toy in half an hour. Spider-Man's eyes widened in shock. It was a large white inflatable robot with rounded lines and a single simple expression, both like a minimalist version of a Michelin and an oversized marshmallow, which looked very healing and cute. Yes, I call it Great White. Little Lori showed an innocent and cute smile. This is one of the novel creations that Kazuba-sensei has mentioned in previous lectures, and now she is just using the Maker machine to restore it to reality. However, this big white is not paired with Stark Industries' advanced artificial intelligence, and only acts according to the fixed system program that has already been entered. If only one day, it's good to come back and manipulate it. Morgan thought to himself. His eyes were like stars, and his white tender little hand gently squeezed Dabi's inflatable big hand. Awesome. Spider-Man marveled that he knew that even with a Maker machine, he had to provide his own analysis, design, and manufacturing ideas. An engineer with mature knowledge and advanced concepts will never be able to manufacture advanced machines from scratch. The 4 villains outside the door, most of whom are science doctors from other worlds, are difficult to understand when they see this scene. This girl, it's a super genius, Dr. Octopus commented, and everyone else nodded. The Electric Light Man looked into the room inside the house and sensed that there was a coveted advanced manufacturing machine. Okay, Morgan, let's go. May took Morgan's little hand. Under the gaze of Spider-Man Peter Parker, the 4 villains with different expressions still gave way outside the door. And just as May walked out the door with Morgan, green light suddenly appeared in the big white eyes behind him, and they glanced at the 4 villains outside the door. Split personality. Somatic desertification, intelligent chaos, body electrification. The diagnosis is successful, and it needs to be further treated with Stark Industries' advanced technology equipment. The big white machine stopped talking and continued to walk out. This is actually a medical robot, advanced and obsessive. Dr. Octopus suddenly spoke. By the way, I recognized her. I saw her in magazines before. The Electric Light Man withdrew his gaze from the room in the house and looked at the back of the little Loli in the corridor. Morgan Stark is the only successor of this world's first industry, worth hundreds of billions of units. Really? When the Sandman heard this, his eyes surged with fanaticism. Once he had money, his daughter could be saved, and obtaining that medical robot might also save her daughter. At this moment, the 4 villains all looked straight at Morgan. Seeing this, Spider-Man Peter Parker suddenly had a strong sense of foreboding that the situation was getting out of control. Peter Parker quickly rushed out of the doorway, blocked the middle of the corridor, and shouted, "Everyone, please come in and let me treat you. Then you can return to your world normally." Quote. First chapter.